The war in Vietnam was fought in the jungles. The dense vegetation served as the perfect camouflage for Viet Cong snipers. To combat this problem, the United States military used chemical defoliants to clear away the thick vegetation. Now Vietnam vets charge that the defoliant, Agent Orange, left hundreds of thousands of soldiers with serious health problems. Leo Cawley and Phil Girard saw combat in Vietnam. Now Leo has a rare form of leukemia, and Phil has ulcers, migraines, and respiratory problems. In addition, his 2 children were born with birth defects. Both say, though the government denies it, that Agent Orange is responsible for their problems. And furthermore, that the chemical companies that produced the herbicide knew all along that the defoliants were lethal to our soldiers. I'm Nancy Merrill. This is People Are Talking. Welcome to People Are Talking. Let's get some background information on you. First of all, what division were you in Vietnam?
I was in Lima Company, 3rd Battalion, 9th Marines.
And what did that mean? What was your actual, what did you have to do?
Well, I was an infantryman and I specialized in demolitions.
How about you, Leah?
I was in Alpha Company, 1st Battalion, 1st Marines, and I was a rifle squad leader and ran patrols in areas that had been sprayed.
That had been sprayed?
Mm-hmm.
All right. When you were in areas, had they been sprayed? Were they being sprayed when you were in them?
I was in areas prior, during, and after.
During the spraying. Doesn't that seem odd? Tell me a little bit what you were told about Agent Orange as a defoliant.
Well, what I was told is it's a non-toxic to human and animal life, will not sterilize the soil, and is only effective if under temperatures under 80 degrees.
It seems to me, though, Vietnam always looked to me like about 90, 100, 110. What was the average temperature in Vietnam?
I think it was around 100, 105.
Yeah. All right, now you were told that this, as you said, would affect no living things except certain types of vegetation. Is that? Did it smell? What did it look like?
I really didn't worry about it that much. I know they say it's an oily base, but I was told by my commanders that this stuff was harmless to us, and I was more concerned with staying alive rather than worrying about some chemical at this point that was supposedly harmless anyway.
And I suppose in a way it was really a godsend for you because of the type of guerrilla warfare. You were hardly going to look a gift horse in the face in the sense that it was clearing, it was working as a defoliant, was it not?
Oh, it was the most effective defoliant I've ever seen in my life.
How quickly after it hit the leaves?
Oh, 3 days, and it would really do a number on the foliage.
3 days, and it was gone. Now, you said you were actually there when they were spraying. Were they spraying in helicopters? What kind of planes were they using?
They did it in Vietnam. They did it in numerous ways. There were people that had backpacks on, just like the firemen's water tanks. They had helicopters or Chinook spraying it. They also had C-130 spraying it, which was, they'd put 3 or 4 planes in a row and they'd spray a path 240 feet.
Was it actually orange? Where does the name Agent Orange come from?
That was just a code name for it. That was on the barrels. There were different types. There was Agent Orange,
white,
blue. Number of them.
How soon after the war was over, Leo, did you find out that you had leukemia?
No, it was a long time. It was health problems started showing up about 10 years or 12 years afterwards, and it was only 3 years ago that I found out that I had leukemia. The gestation period for the effects is very long, which has made it interesting because you can't sue very often if you have been damaged longer
sort of a
than 3
statute
years.
of limitations.
Statute of limitations, and so we had to fight in various states to extend the statute of limitations so that we could sue the chemical companies.
It is said that you have a rare form of leukemia. What is the name of it?
Multiple myeloma, and that normally doesn't show up in people who are under 55, and I've encountered a lot of people, vets, who have had multiple myeloma, and I've been contacted by them. As a result, I suspect that multiple myeloma will be one of the malignancies that will show up as being disproportionately present in vets.
How does it manifest itself, this type of leukemia?
Your bones break, and you have fatigue, and you have difficulties with your antibody system, so you can't resist cold.
Is that how you discovered? Were your bones suddenly breaking for no logical cause?
My back broke.
How?
I got in a scuffle with somebody who was stealing my dog, and my back broke. And I was in incredible pain, but I thought I'd thrown out my back. And when I was x-rayed, the doctors looked at it and they said something did that to your vertebrae. And that's how I found out.
Do you suffer from anything besides this type of leukemia? Any other side effects?
Not that I can detect, but when you have leukemia and you're taking chemotherapy for it, you have so many effects from that it's hard to disentangle.
Are you on chemo right now?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, how has this affected your life? I know you used to be a professor of economics at Georgetown.
It's slowed me down a lot. I have low resistance to disease, fatigue,
Who's
back
paying
pain.
for all your medical treatments?
I am, through my private insurance. The VA does not recognize Agent Orange diseases as such. It does recognize chloracne, and it did so only under protest. And if you have any of the other associated diseases, you're out of luck. You pay for it yourself.
How much has it cost you so far in medical bills?
That's something I try not to think about. It's costing me a lot. $10,000, but then there's income foregone because I've been sick. It's been expensive.
Are you in remission right now?
Yes.
You look really quite well. Do you have any doubt in your mind that this was caused by anything other than Agent Orange?
You can't ever say if the disease shows up 40 times as frequently in your group that you are not the 40th person who wouldn't have gotten it anyway. But you do know that you belong to a group that is getting this disease in wildly disproportionate degree from anybody else.
Now, Phil, in your case, your wife has given birth to 2 little boys at different times.
Correct.
How old are they now?
One's 5 and one's 3.
Now, correct me if I'm, both children were born with club feet.
Correct.
All right. Was there any history of club feet in your family?
No. Plus the fact that I don't drink, I don't smoke, and I have never in my life taken drugs, which Dow Chemical loves to blame alcohol and drug abuse on Vietnam veterans.
Yeah, well, Doug, you said Dow likes to blame drinking and smoking and taking drugs on the veterans. I can see,
right.
but how is that going to account for that? That doesn't cause someone to have children with birth defects, the type that you have described, nor does it cause necessarily a rare kind of leukemia.
You know, blaming the victim is a time-honored tactic, and you know, they'd much rather talk about something that you do personally, and that's what they've done.
What is this here?
Successfully, too.
That's a statement that Dow had sent out to a Vietnam Veterans organization stating that the reason that the Vietnam veterans are having so many problems is because of their drug abuse, their alcohol abuse.
It says here that so many of you use drugs and alcohol to escape the realities of war. And they do mention, though, a couple of other diseases. A tropical disease that many Vietnam vets got, battle fatigue was prevalent, and they think that's all playing a part in causing the veterans' problems today. How does that cause chloroacne, for instance? You told me you were suffering before the show from chloroacne.
There's no way it can cause that. In fact, when I had the dates on there, I have a map in here showing the dates of spraying missions that my unit was actually exposed to Agent Orange. I was wounded shortly after that, and when I went to the hospital, my wounds were minor. Initially, I only would have spent probably 2 weeks in the hospital, but I ended up spending a month in the hospital because I had such a severe case of chloroacne. Yeah. They had to keep me there longer.
What does chloroacne look like?
It blisters, you know, massive pimples, you know, boils.
Does it hurt? Does it itch?
It does. It's just like a very severe case of
boils and
rashes.
poison ivy.
Right.
Yeah. What do you treat it with? Anything? Is anything?
There's no treatment really for it. They give you a number of salves for it, but none of them
That's
work.
the only thing that what the government or the chemical companies have agreed could be a side effect of Agent Orange. That's the only thing they'll agree to.
Yeah.
Right. Do you ever get rid of it?
No.
There's no cure for chloroacne.
Plus the fact that when you go to the VA for testing for chloroacne, they usually schedule a month or month and a half later on down the road. So by the time you go for your exam, it's already gone. And that's all you have left is a scar tissue.
Can you spread it? Is it contagious?
I don't think so.
No,
I hope not.
All right. Now, in addition to that, you have migraine headaches, and you complain of respiratory problems. Can you describe the type of respiratory problems you have?
Yeah, I cough like I've been smoking for years and years, and I don't smoke. Chronic bronchitis, you might call it. I'm not sure what they really call it.
Do you have any doubt in your mind, I'll ask you the same question that I asked Leo, that Agent Orange has caused all these problems in you primarily and also in your children as a secondary factor?
No, there's no doubt in my mind at all, for the simple reason that there's too many of us that are having the exact same problems. Plus the fact that people in Nitro, West Virginia, in 1949, when they first started producing the chemical, they had an accident in a Dow chemical plant, and they had the same problems that the Vietnam veterans are having.
Phone question for you. Hello there, you're on People Are Talking.
Oh, yes. I'm a Vietnam veteran, and I'd like to know, how does a veteran find out if he's been exposed to Agent Orange?
Yeah. Obviously, they're not going to send you a letter in the mail and say your battalion was sprayed, so how do you find out?
If you were in Vietnam, you have the potential to have been exposed because anything that was sprayed went into the groundwater. So if you drank water, you have the potential of being affected by the chemical. Now, there are a lot of difficulties in measuring how some people may have been more exposed than others. But if you were in country and you drank groundwater, or you waded, or you were rained on, or you got mud on your legs, you very well may have been exposed to Agent Orange. It's possible. Now, we don't know exactly how important it is that some people were in areas that were more heavily sprayed, where some people may have been out only drinking the water or only bathing in it. But if you were in the country, you were exposed in some degree.
Does it make a difference to how long a period of time you were exposed to Agent Orange, or can it just be one shot, one day? Let's just assume, hypothetically, someone was exposed to it and they were removed and out of the country. Would they still suffer the same effects?
It's possible. Some people may be very, very sensitive to it, and so a very little bit may have brought on disease. The one thing everyone seems to agree on is that there is no safe level of dioxin exposure. If you decrease the level of exposure by 1/2, then the amount of the diseases that you'll see will be cut in about a half.
But at the
and
time,
if you shrink it even more, so you never go down below a safe. There is no safety level.
But you know this now, Leo. But at the time when this was being sprayed, they told you it was perfectly safe.
No, we weren't thinking about that at all. When you're being mortared and so on, you're worried about other things. We really absolutely did not think about that at all.
We were worried about the initial danger at that point.
You were worried about survival.
We had no thought of it at all.
We're going to take a break. When we come back, we have one of the attorneys who is representing the 150,000 vets who are suing the chemical companies for billions of dollars, and also we have an epidemiologist. Is that the right way to pronounce it? From Mount Sinai Hospital. Stay with us, please.
Marvelous Marvin Hagler is about to help Dave Maynard explain the WBZ Lucky Number game.
He doesn't look like he wants to help. Does he look like he wants to help?
Lucky numbers in your phone number could win you some knockout prizes. Like a stereo, a color TV, or even a new car.
Now we're going to need new prizes.
There's a new prize every day on Maynard in the Morning.
Hey, thanks for the help, Marv. Piece of cake.
Details on WBZ Radio.
Yeah, this is the house.
Yep, they're the ones having Prince Light spaghetti.
How could they without us calories? But it does look delicious.
How can a spaghetti taste good when 1/3 of us calories have been left out?
Right.
The kid's eating it up.
But wait, Dad won't like it.
Want a Bev?
Honey, this is great. What'd you say it was?
Prince Light spaghetti. All they left out was 1/3 the calories.
I don't even miss them.
Oh, Prince Light spaghetti.
1/3 less calories.
What are we having?
Oh, surprise.
Fish stick.
No, they're chicken sticks.
They look like fish sticks.
Taste it.
Tastes like,
Chicken?
Chicken.
100% chicken. Banquet chicken sticks.
Terrific idea. I bet you the fish stick people are mad.
No.
Sure they are.
Well, maybe a little.
New Banquet sticks, nuggets, and patties are 100% tender, juicy chicken. Gonna drive fish stick lovers mad.
I told you.
Ben Franklin knew France and French cuisine. Now, fine French cooking is in Boston at Maison Robert with 2 exceptional restaurants, Bonhomme Richard for sumptuous dining, and Ben's Cafe, perfect for a relaxed lunch or dinner. At Ben's Cafe, you'll find superb French cooking, popularly priced and served in a warm, casual atmosphere. Stop in day or night at Maison Robert and enjoy Ben's Cafe. Maison Robert, where every meal is a celebration.
David Dean is joining us now. He's one of 6 attorneys who is representing the Vietnam veterans in their class action suit, which, as I understand it, David, is going to come to trial this June.
Yes,
is
this
that
June
correct?
in New York. All of the Agent Orange cases from throughout the country have been brought to New York and consolidated in New York, and that class action will be tried the end of this June.
A total of, what, about 150 vets, you think?
150,000 vets is what we assume will be part of this class from the 2.5 million vets who paid their dues in Vietnam.
Are still paying their dues.
Indeed they are, and their
me.
children are paying their dues, and their wives.
Now, Dr. Susan Daum is an epidemiologist, and you're affiliated with Mount Sinai, a very prestigious hospital in New York. Now, you are also a doctor as well as a scientist. Now, tell me your relationship with studying the effects of Agent Orange on human beings.
Well, as a scientist, I've been very interested in this problem, and as a clinician, I have been available to see veterans who've been exposed and other individuals in the general environment who've been exposed to the misuse of phenoxy herbicides, these Agent Orange type sprays, both in the United States and in Vietnam. I have seen people exposed in the United States to a single episode of spraying who developed disease, to answer your question
before. That was my question, yeah.
And among a group of 20 people, there was a rather significant number of people who developed clinical disease with the patterns that one would expect from this chemical poisoning.
What do you mean patterns?
Well, it's a very difficult disease to pin down. It causes abnormalities in the nerves, it causes abnormalities in the liver, it causes abnormalities in the blood counts, it causes abnormalities in the fat levels in the blood. It causes psychiatric disease, actually from brain damage, and pancreatic disease. And by looking at the pattern, the fingerprint of how many different organs were affected in these people. And also it causes cancer. And there was one specific kind of cancer which we call a marker or a signal cancer. In a group of 20 people, there had been one of those cancers. So what I was able to do as an epidemiologist with 20 people, no controls, say these people have the pattern. As a group, as a conglomerate, they have the fingerprints of the presence of this chemical, which has long since left their bodies, no doubt. We couldn't measure the levels, but their clinical abnormalities can only be explained by one possible or probable cause because of the numbers of different organs which were affected.
And in this particular case, you are saying that it is Agent Orange. Now, David, it would seem to me that somebody like Susan would be a perfect person to testify in these trials.
Seems that way to me also.
Will you be testifying?
I guess so.
Yes, but also, won't it be just the same type of thing we saw in the Hinckley trial? You're going to have all the experts for the defense on as well. So the government will bring on their troops of epidemiologists who will say, hey, there's absolutely no connection whatsoever. And this will go on for years and years and years.
We hope not. Several points. In the first place, the government is not a defendant in this case. The soldiers cannot sue the government for the injuries that they have received in wartime, says the Supreme Court, and we must abide by that. It's the chemical companies, Daum, Monsanto, certainly, Thompson Haywood, Diamond Shamrock, those large chemical companies who produced Agent Orange during the war in Vietnam, who are the responsible parties. Why? Because they knew that Agent Orange was deadly. They knew it was toxic. Is this a lawyer talking? Yes, but we have the goods. We have the documents showing that the chemical companies met at the very beginning of the dissemination of Agent Orange. They met and they knew that Agent Orange contained a toxic impurity, and they agreed not to talk about it, not to tell the government about it, and certainly not to tell the soldiers about it.
But didn't the government have independent scientists and chemists who would test it? I mean, when you were dealing with something like this, would they just take the word of the chemical company?
You know, as hard as it may be to believe, that's the way it really does work. And in a specialized field like herbicides, like Agent Orange, the government looked to the chemical companies and said, we want to defoliate Vietnam, give us the chemicals to do it with. And the chemical companies supplied those chemicals. Now,
tell me the motivation. Why would they say this amongst each other, knowing that this could come out, and subject themselves to multi-billion-dollar lawsuits? I don't understand the motivation.
I don't understand the motivation either, but there was such a motivation. One may look to economics, perhaps. One may look to their place in the marketplace, their reputation. Whatever the reason was, they did it. Remember, Agent Orange contains dioxin, and that's the killer. That's the poisonous substance. And if I told this audience, and I think almost all of the audience knows it anyway, but if I told this audience that, for example, Agent Orange was contaminated with cyanide, people would be very upset. Dioxin is more than 100,000 times more powerful than cyanide. Can you imagine that? That's what was in Agent Orange, and that's what's caused the horrible problems that we see
Is that
today.
how you see it too, Susan? That's the active ingredient in Agent Orange that caused the most harm?
Yes, it is. It caused, if not all of the harm, certainly the most harm. And it's like botulism. The toxin that you can get from a home canned vegetable, it's in that order of magnitude. Molecules, single molecules are toxic.
3 ounces could kill everyone in New York City, was a figure I got from an epidemiologist. And that 3 ounces for 8 million people is a lot. You only need 1 ounce then to kill Boston.
Oh, no, let me just go back to this. 3 ounces could kill 8 million people. Well, how many ounces were... You're talking about pure dioxin.
Yes.
All right. How many ounces do you think were actually sprayed in Vietnam?
Okay, in Vietnam, like in Times Beach, Missouri, they were talking about 1 part per billion in the ground. In Vietnam, Dr. Matt Messelson found up to 50 parts per million. That's 50,000 times greater than they're paying out in Times Beach.
What does that translate in terms of the ounces? I'm fascinated with the figure 3 ounces.
350 pounds contained in 10 million gallons of herbicide sprayed.
All in all, there were more than 44 million pounds of herbicide, of the toxic herbicide sprayed in Vietnam.
I understand. Phone question for you. Hello there. You're on People Are Talking.
Yes.
Hello? We can hear you. Go ahead, please.
Okay, yes, I'm a Vietnam veteran. I was exposed in 1968 to Agent Orange. I have a question for the doctor from Mount Sinai. I've been struggling with the VA for years now with my medical situation. I have a degenerative nerve disease, central nervous system. I've been thrown diagnoses such as melioidosis, which is a tropical disease as far as I know. Also, there's been some question as to whether or not this is a synergenic reaction. In other words, all the things that I was exposed to are contributing to this disease. Also, presently at this time, my diagnosis is a central nervous system demyelinative disease after exposure to Agent Orange. I was wondering, I'm saying that mostly for veterans out there who are also suffering from misdiagnosis, I believe, by the VA because of lack of information. And I'd like to appreciate the time for Nancy and the doctors and everybody to give this some light.
Can I ask you something, sir? You just said that misdiagnosis because of lack of information.
Yes, from the medical profession, because there is a lack of information amongst the medical community for the problems that the Vietnam veteran...
You don't think in any way it was deliberate, do you?
No, I think it's ignorance.
Okay, fine. Could you respond to that?
There's certainly a great deal of both disinterest or misinformation among medical colleagues who are used to basically treating diseases and not bothering to find out the cause. I mean, that is what we are trained to do in medical school and postgraduate training. And the general lack of desire for doctors to appear in courtrooms or be involved in something which takes them out of their realm of what they consider their own expertise. That's quite intimidating to some physicians. Now, there is also a great deal that's not known about this substance, and there has been a very, very consistent lack on the part of both government agencies and the chemical companies to fund research, which would be appropriately designed to answer the questions posed by this gentleman.
What encourages me, Susan, and you can tell me if this is true in your case, it seems to me that the Vietnam vets, Leo and Phil, have educated themselves on their own and are going to the physicians and say, hey, this is what I think I've got. They've had to do that.
That's exactly right. You cannot imagine how...
Sure.
The Vietnam Veterans of Massachusetts Incorporated is located in Massachusetts. We get calls from other Vietnam veterans as far away as New Jersey, Virginia, the District of Columbia itself, because indeed when they go to their private physicians, the physicians will not take this very courageous stand of saying that we think your condition might indeed have been caused by Agent Orange, and in the further stand of saying we will indeed go into a courthouse and say that on oath.
So that's what Susan said is quite accurate. You're saying that.
It's quite accurate.
Let me go one step further.
We're coming right back after these messages, so please don't go away.
Our cookies come out great because of what we put in them. Our absolute #1 favorite raisins, Sun-Maid. They love them out of the box, in cakes, salads, even on peanut butter sandwiches. Fresh, sweet Sun-Maid. I wouldn't dream of using anything less, because putting any old raisins into these beauties would mean putting them into these beauties.
Fresh out of the box or fresh out of the oven. Sun-Maid, we're America's favorite raisin.
Well, Positively New England's about the people and places that make up the heart of New England. Whether it's seaside, countryside, cityside, stories abound here. Positive stories about friendly, positive people. I guess that's why we call it Positively New England.
Liz Walker brings you the spirit, heritage, and beauty of New England each week in her series Positively New England. Mondays on Eyewitness News at 6.
You know, you could explore New England for 100 years and never see it all.
Brooks is the pharmacy that you can
Brooks and Adams Drugs is really hopping with everything you need for Easter. We have baskets filled with an assortment of special treats. Or create your own surprise with solid or hollow chocolate bunnies, Easter eggs, jelly beans, and more from our large candy selection. And who can resist our colorful, cuddly, plush stuffed animals? This Easter, put everything in one basket with Easter treats from Brooks and Adams Drugs.
We're Brooks, and you'll feel better about us.
Bright eyes and a shiny coat. Take a look at that. Cats that have that bright eyes look have the look of a healthy cat.
Does your cat have that bright eyes look? Bright eyes and a shiny coat? Feed him Bright Eyes gourmet cat food. Cats love it. Extra vitamins and protein help give your cat bright, sparkling eyes. And a special blend of oils help give him a rich, shiny coat.
Cats that have that bright eyes look have the look of a healthy cat.
Julie DeProfil from Wather, and you're watching WBZ TV Today's 4.
Lest you think this is a one-sided conversation and we are all up here condemning the chemical companies for what they did, you should be aware that we did call Dow Chemical Company, and you saw the statement during the break, but they said they were not permitted to talk by the judge presently involved in the case, which I can understand that. What I can understand is the Veterans Administration. We contacted them in Washington. They said they couldn't send a spokesman nor a scientist because of the live format of our program and because they thought it would lead to a highly emotional discussion. This must be very upsetting for the Vietnam vets who are sitting here and knowing their liaison with the government is supposed to be the Veterans Administration. How do you think they've been treating you? Are you surprised that they wouldn't send a representative today?
No, I'm not surprised at all, and I'm not surprised the EPA's not here either. And the more I hear here, the madder I'm getting. I mean, but what I really want to know is, what about our offspring? I mean, we're going to have Vietnam veterans for the end of time.
Perhaps not. We don't know whether or not the genealogical damage will be transmitted beyond your offsprings. I pray that it will not, but no one can promise that. I mean,
every time I talk to somebody, Leo and Phil here, I mean, I've had my back operated on. I just broke my leg. I've had kidney problems this year. I got a stack of Blue Cross Blue Shield bills this big, but I won't go near the VA.
Why not?
Well, you go in and they stick a thermometer in your mouth before they ask your name.
Can I say something about their testing program, too? The first thing that when you go to a VA hospital and ask for an Agent Orange screening test is they send you to a psychiatrist who tells you you're nuts. Agent Orange doesn't cause that stuff. You people don't know what you're talking about. Your lawyers don't know what they're talking about. They totally insult the individual. They demean him, they make him feel about that big, and the guy walks out of there and he never goes back again.
Lest you think that these are just some unhappy people talking, I assure you that that's not so. The care given to, or the lack of care, that the VA has given to the vets has been disgraceful. And the VA is without question subject to gross condemnation for this. Where I live, there's a VA hospital on Long Island. And the investigative arm of the government, the GAO, came into that hospital to see what the VA was doing for the vets. Up until that point, that hospital had run 129 tests for 129 veterans. You know how many of those tests the government determined were inadequate? All 129. Every single veteran who was seen by the VA was seen in a way that was sloppy, uninformed, and no wonder the vets go out shaking their fists at the VA.
Where are they getting the orders from? You know, it's always passing the buck, and the orders are supposed to come from up high. Or where does this generate from?
Well, the VA did nothing for years. Oh, finally, there was a congressional mandate that the VA had to put in herbicide clinics in each and every hospital. Have they? No. Some of them have doctors that say, yes, I'm a herbicide doctor, and I guarantee you there's not a vet in all of Boston who doesn't know more than the VA doctors who claim that they're herbicide experts.
So far, we're up against an institutional wall. The chemical companies, you can understand, it's in their interest to deny this, and they've done that effectively, and they'll continue to do that. They'll deny the association just the way that tobacco companies are still denying the association between cancer and smoking. They'll do that till the end of time. The VA can be pressured, but only when Vietnam veterans who dribbled back, they didn't come home en masse like from World War II, and when we came home in smaller numbers, and we came home and the people who exercised their college deferment avoided service. As a result, the people who went to Vietnam were people who were less informed, had less access to lawyers and to media, and the levers of power that are important. And when we get organized, and we get organized like the World War II veterans, and pressure the government and the VA, we'll be able to make this and get the things that the World War II people got.
But let me introduce you to Senator Francis Doris. You're the chairman of the Special Commission on the Concerns of the Vietnam Vets, sir, right here in Massachusetts. You've heard this before.
I think at the opening I'd like to agree with the distinguished attorney. Today's program doesn't consist of a few Vietnam veterans griping about an issue. The Commission held hearings throughout the Commonwealth, and we had a special hearing on the question of Agent Orange. We were honored that Dr. Messelson from Harvard and Dr. Francesca Lavecchio from Tufts Medical School cared enough to come forward. And as your distinguished guest, your physician from Mount Sinai, has stated, Dr. Lavecchio's findings have been similar. In the studies that she was able to conduct, it showed approximately a ratio of 37% birth defects in those Vietnam veterans who were studied versus a 5% average of birth defects throughout the entire country. In addition to that, the points that Phil and Leo raised are quite valid. In the studies that Dr. Messelson from Harvard had done on monkeys and other lower animal life, they did find those things that were brought out in the hearings from the individual Vietnam veterans. And I congratulate them for coming forward, because we wouldn't be at the stage we are without their leadership. That, in fact, the results of those studies did show, according to Dr. Messelson's testimony, birth defects in those monkeys.
But is that good enough? Is that good enough to pay their bills or to even get them into the hospital? Apparently it's not.
No, it's not. But what I'm doing is substantiating the statements of the doctor and the complaints and the studies of the injection. For example, in a case, an injection of a monkey, the lethal dose, which would normally kill that monkey, they found, as Phil and Leo brought out, that the dioxin stays in the system for a long period of time. It could be 5, 10, 15 years
but Senator,
before
in terms of practicality, and you were very emotionally involved in this, and happily so for the Vietnam vets who do need support. Practically speaking, how many months, how many years is it going to be before these men and their children are given care that is paid for by the Veterans Administration?
Too many years have gone by. We all know that. Over a decade has gone by. What's very important here is the shifting of responsibility. The Veterans Administration did an invalid study, but hired Michael Gross, a chemist, and this is an area that the federal government should pursue. The chemist aspect. And Michael Gross did a study on 30 individuals. 10 of them were not veterans. 20 of them were Vietnam veterans. Everything was coded. He didn't know where they were from.
He was hired by the Veterans Administration.
From the Veterans
What were the
Administration.
conclusions?
The conclusions were, of the 20 who were veterans, there were 3 with very heavy concentrations of the dioxin. As a result of that, Michael Gross suggested to the VA that the Air Force take the study over, and as many of the Vietnam vets know here, the heavy concentration was
Let me interrupt
in
you just a
Operation
minute
Range.
here, because somebody else we should mention, we also asked to come on. It's funny, it fed right into this. Who's going to do the studies of it is the Center for the Disease Control, who have been assigned to do the ultimate studies. And they said that there's nothing to talk about right now, and therefore they don't want to come on, and they're just starting their tests on 30,000 vets to examine them for the effects of Agent Orange, and they tell us it will take 4 to 5 years before they can complete these studies.
Can I
What'd you
bring
say?
up a point?
Someone
That's
else?
correct.
Oh.
That's correct.
Let me introduce you, sir. This is Professor Cy Leventman. He's a sociologist at Boston College, and you're studying the politics of the Agent Orange issue.
Right, yeah.
And several times during the show, I could hear you go, you're chomping at the bit. What's it all about?
Well, I've been involved in this for a year and a half, actually, trying to put together an overall picture. As a sociologist, I'm not an MD, I'm not a medical person, but I'm trying to explain why, for example, as you said, Nancy, why is the VA assuming this position? How do you explain the response of the VA to Agent Orange, why are they, in effect, in an adversary relationship with veterans, when in fact they should be reaching out?
Is it because there were no heroes on this war?
no,
If it had been another war, would they be reacting differently?
I've asked that question many times. For example, suppose Vietnam veterans were middle and upper middle class people instead of essentially working lower class, middle class people, instead of predominantly minority group persons. What would the difference have been if, for example, Agent Orange had been used by the enemy instead of by us? You're talking about essentially something that was a friendly fire symptom.
Yeah. And we were shot in the back by the chemical companies who put profits before patriotism.
That's one way to put it.
See, a lot of times right now you hear the VA say that this is communist propaganda.
Yeah.
Hell, we were the people that served in Vietnam. The chemical companies made money off of us.
What are your conclusions so far, not knowing what's happening?
Yeah, well, so far, my conclusions, I'm doing a book on this, but my conclusions thus far is that from the bureaucratic point of view, you've got to look into how government bureaucracies work. The VA is very easy, and I'm not defending them by any means, it's very easy to consider them as, the enemies and villains and so on. But when you talk to them, I've talked to Dr. Shepard, and I've talked to Al Young, and I know these guys. They're not meanies, but they're total bureaucrats. That's what they are. They are totally loyal bureaucrats, and that's what you have to understand. The VA's position is a bureaucratic position.
But where are the vets going to turn
Loyal
to,
to
if
the VA.
they can't turn to the Veterans Administration? Where are they going to turn?
Well, I think, interestingly enough, and I myself am not usually a defender of the political process or the U.S. Congress, but right now, the hopeful action lies in the U.S. Congress. The U.S. Congress, especially the House and to some extent the House Vets Committee, and particular congressman from South Dakota, Congressman Daschle, has offered certain bills to authorize the VA to pay on a presumptive basis, to pay compensation for certain kinds of ailments on a presumptive basis, as the U.S. government already does in black lung and radiation and other areas.
Phone question for you. Hello there, you're on People Are Talking.
Hi, Nancy. I'm only 15, and I don't have an awful lot of knowledge as to what happened in Vietnam. This is directed at any of the gentlemen there. To your knowledge, were there any people in Vietnam who did die there because of the substance Agent Orange?
Are you talking about the Viet Cong? The enemy?
Anywhere where the Agent Orange was spread.
That's a really good
Okay,
question. We've never talked about what happened to those who remained in Vietnam.
In 1980, the Japanese did a news study similar to our 60 Minutes. I've got the translation of the film, and in the exposed area where the herbicide was used, up to this date, they are still having up to a 50% birth defect rate in that country.
The specific answer to the caller's question is yes, of course people were killed in Vietnam. It wasn't just the soldiers who came back with those terrible scars. The people who stayed there indeed were hurt. There's a recent survey emanating from North Vietnam. And apart from the politics of it, and I really don't know whether we should sift this carefully or accept it, but that study involved 40,000 people, and which unquestionably said that there were birth defects caused by Agent Orange.
She also asked something, and maybe we've glossed over it. She wanted to know if anyone actually died of it.
Yes, we think they did. There's a Vietnamese doctor who recently died who spent his life working on the effects of Agent Orange in Vietnam. two things he observed was increased birth defects in women who were sprayed during their pregnancy or thereafter, that is, they gave birth to dead children or died thereafter, and liver cancer. Now, there's certainly reason to think the liver cancers are related because they occur in animals as well. Liver
Are you
cancer
contending
is-
that he died because of exposure to this during the
this
study?
doctor, I don't know anything about his death. He was an elderly gentleman, but he's devoted his life to working on the toxic effects of in Vietnam of this material. And he wasn't even popular in Vietnam. He had to work against tremendous odds. Those governments, for whatever reasons, as I say, I don't know the politics either. Yeah. And the most recent study is wives of North Vietnamese soldiers, some of whom went to the South and were sprayed, and wives who stayed home, whose husbands fought in the North, some exposed to Agent Orange, some not. And the wives with the husbands exposed to Agent Orange also have a high degree of birth defects.
Well,
now, that has not been published in the American literature.
Are any of these studies going to be admitted into evidence, or I should ask you, David, and will they hold any water?
I suspect that some of the studies will. There are evidentiary problems with some of those that are really not significant now. But when you ask about the trial, I wanted to emphasize this. The trial that we're going to have in June is a trial of one issue. And that issue is knowledge. Whether the government knew as much as the chemical companies knew about the toxicity of the product. The chemical companies' defense is something that just causes me to scratch my head in wonderment. The chemical companies' defense is, we were only following orders. We call that the Nuremberg defense, and I think you can understand why.
We're taking a break. We're coming right back after these messages. Please stay with us.
At extra special prices, look no further than True Value Hardware Store's Bargain of the Month. In April, it's the True Value 32-gallon trash can for only $9.88. This industrial-strength container and tight-fitting lid withstand rough treatment. During April, this True Value trash can is just $9.88. Look for the Bargain of the Month banner at participating True Value hardware stores and home centers.
You gotta have arts. We believe that. And judging from your generous financial support of the Fund for the Arts, so do you. As the fund continues to grow, so does the list of people who have mailed in contributions. Thank you all. WBZ TV is matching your gifts dollar for dollar, because you gotta have arts.
Are you ready? They're coming. The swans of Swan Lake. What would spring be without these enchanted creatures? Critics say the Boston Ballet is looking better than ever. Accompanied by the ballet orchestra at the Colonial Theater, you'll hear every note, see every turn, and almost reach out and touch a swan. Just call the Boston Ballet. But hurry, like spring in the night, swans make a fleeting appearance. April 6th through 24.
Oh, you poor dog. Let me get you a bone. The last time I tried this, the cupboard was bare. Now I've wised up, and I've stocked up on these New Bonanza beef hide bones.
They're high protein, low fat, and have a beefy coating of jerky that dogs love. Watch this.
Good dog. New Bonanza beef hide bones with a beefy coating of jerky.
Dogs prefer them over other rawhide bones 8-1.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Leo's wife, and
Hilda.
Hilda. And my question is, why isn't there a representative of the VA here today?
I've already told you why.
Why?
They wouldn't come on. I read the statement.
The thing is that you can understand the chemical corporations, even if you don't agree with them, that perhaps it's greed that's operating.
They said it was too much of an emotional issue and they did not like our live format and thought it would be too emotional.
It wouldn't be in their best interest, is what they're saying.
And by the way, the quote that was shown of Dow Chemical Company indicating why they didn't want to be on, that's a lot of baloney. There is no court order that prevents the lawyers involved in this case from talking about it.
They said it was the judge in the case who told them they couldn't.
Well, I have been there at all of the 60 hearings that we've had over the past over 3 years, and I will tell you that what the judge said at the request of the chemical companies who made this application was, don't reveal the documents until the time of trial. I'd love to talk about those documents, and I can't. But don't let the chemical company representatives say that they are prevented from talking about this case. They're not. I can understand why they don't want to talk about it, but there's no mandate that says they can't.
Yeah, it's worth pointing out that Dow has one of the best organized, best financed corporate speak-up programs of any corporation in the country. They can put a speaker at your PTA meeting if you give them 2 hours' notice. Right now, they've gone into deep corporate silence. There are only a very few high-level Dow officials who are talking to the press at all.
Leah, why is Dow always, why is the finger always pointed at Dow? There are about 6 other
They're
companies.
the most aggressive, they're the most formidable opponents, and as it happens, we think that their product was more toxic.
Plus, they're representing.
Oh, wait a minute, I'm sorry, what did you say, sir?
Dow made 80%
They'll
of
bear
the
the brunt of the settlement, if probably.
So they've got the most to lose.
Yeah, and they are very normally very good at putting their point of view across. At the moment, they're only letting a few people talk. And the expression that they gave when I tried to get someone for this show, Hal Folger said that they think that the atmosphere is poisoned by this discussion.
No pun intended.
Illegal. Yeah, I couldn't believe
It's
that
an
they used that
interesting choice
expression.
of words, of course, Susan.
As far as the Veterans Administration is concerned, the Veterans Administration has to be thought of as the industrial physician in this job. They employed you in the sense of your medical care. And it's been my experience that the plant physician feels that the industrial disease is better off under the rug. The less they know about it, the less that's said, the better, because then they don't have to pay the insurance, the compensation, and the medical care.
We'll give you one example of that. Another one that, besides the one that was referred to before, a number of the major producers of Agent Orange, before they produced Agent Orange, had industrial accidents, explosions, as a result of which many people were contaminated by that poison. They knew about it. Dow, Monsanto, Diamond Shamrock all had major health problems within their companies over the byproduct that
David,
goes
I'll
into
ask you
Agent
the
Orange.
same question I asked you 20 minutes ago. Why? What possible motivation? Knowing the harmful effects of this, would they use this defoliant?
It's done. I don't know why. I just know that
Was there not an alternative defoliant they could sell? It's a free enterprise system. They were trying to make money. Let's admit that. But certainly they're not fools as we are painting them to sound.
They've gotten away with it for 20 years now, and we're not sure that we're going to win.
Wait, what did you say, sir?
I'd just like to say the reason I'm here is because of the complete laxity the VA's had over the whole entire Agent Orange issue.
Were you in Vietnam?
I was in, in the summer of 1970, I spent over 70 days on Hill 845, a completely defoliated hilltop in the Quezon Mountains. And since after that, I've got pictures of this whole place. You can see the place is completely defoliated.
It really is, isn't
right. And upon my return, I've had 2 slight heart attacks. I've come down with onset juvenile diabetes. There's no diabetes. I'm 32 years old.
You've had 2 heart attacks?
And I've had all the classic Agent Orange things, from the numbness in the extremities to the reoccurring rashes.
Where do you go for medical care?
To the West Rockford Veterans Administration.
What do they say to you?
They tell me, take some Lotrimin and rub that on your rash and then take a hike.
Can I see your T-shirt? Okay. It says, can you get a tight shot of that? It says,
Anyway.
Agent Orange, the Vietnam War lives
And
on.
it will continue to live on until we get some action here. Obviously, we're getting a class action done now with these lawyers. Finally, you know, I don't know if we should go out to the chemical companies or the government itself. I mean, we all get a raw deal.
Well, I guess you don't get a choice whether to go after the government or not. There's something called a sovereignty. What's it called?
Sovereign immunity.
Yeah, sovereign immunity, and
So you have no
just
choice.
indicates that we can't sue the government. However, the government surely can help. The VA has been condemned here, as it's been condemned in the past, and properly so. They haven't done enough. But the good thing, and you ask what can people do, one of the things that's happening is the interest that the senator and others have taken in this area, the interest that college professors have taken, the interest of all the people in the audience and the people listening to this, and the interest that your program has shown. The more we speak about this, the more people know, the greater the chance for legislative action. You see, some years ago, dioxin existed and it poisoned, but people didn't know about it. I look in today's paper in Boston and I see the latest toxic waste scandal at Holbrook, where people have been dying, people have...
That's right, since dioxin is the same chemical as Agent Orange and it's been popping up in people's backyards all over the country, does that mean that you can expect the same kind of time bomb effect that the veterans have experienced? In other words, 10 years later, people from Times Beach may develop cancer.
There are toxic time bombs
is there a legal
all
connection
over this
between
country.
how successful you are with the Vietnam vets
It's
as
10
opposed to
years.
lawsuits
It goes
down the
on
road?
after that.
The Vietnam veterans are the alarm system of what's happening in this country today.
Let me
It's
introduce your wife.
everybody's problem.
Let me introduce your wife, Pat, here. And you gave birth to the 2 children that had the club feet. Is that
Yes,
right?
I am. New England Medical Center has been doing studies on the children, so if anyone is interested in having their children studied for this purpose, please contact them. I also want to make a comment on these different chemical companies that are spraying your lawns. I'm concerned about the chemicals that are in them. They're telling you, okay, don't walk on it and don't let any of your animals on it for at least an hour. Why? And why are there people being tested every 2 weeks, a blood test? And these people are so concerned about their lawns, be concerned about their lives.
What you
is it
find,
going to
I
do
could
with the
see
children?
Susan smiling when you said that. Obviously, you've heard this argument.
I've seen the people who are spraying the stuff. They get so sick.
I just don't
Agent Orange is not the Vietnam veterans' problem anymore. It's a national issue. People are dying every day in our country because of this. Times Beach, Missouri, Verona, Missouri, Nitro, West Virginia.
What was going on in those
Globe,
sites
I can
in
name
Missouri?
hundreds of places.
Phil, what was going on?
26 sites in Missouri that have been contaminated and established to be contaminated by the poison dioxin, that poison which is in Agent Orange.
What was it being used for in Missouri?
One of those sites, I think, for toxic waste dumps and or
The Missouri
manufacturing
story
processes.
was that a man who was responsible for disposing of industrial toxic wastes went around to various places and picked up oil in his truck, Mr. Bliss. And he, instead of getting rid of the oil, decided he was going to sell it. And he sold it for the purpose, actually he applied it. He sold his services to apply it to dusty areas to suppress dust. He applied it to various riding stadiums in Holt Summit, Missouri, and around that area. And all the horses and the birds and the animals died and the people got sick. That was written up in the scientific
chemical was
literature.
that?
It was a waste oil which was highly contaminated with dioxin. It started out as trichlorophenol, which is the thing that it was contaminating. And then Mr. Bliss did his job all over Missouri, spreading this oil and dumping toxic tanks.
Are you
instead of
finding
getting
in the
them rid of
studies,
it.
Susan, of this, that the people coming up with the same side effects that the vets had from Agent Orange, is that showing up in the population?
In
now?
some instances it is, and in some instances with new side effects that we don't know about are showing up.
We're taking a break. We're coming right back after these messages. Please don't go away.
Hi, not so long ago, I was wider than this fridge and about as heavy.
In this week's Star, famous Helpful Hints author Mary Ellen lets you in on a secret.
A secret that helped me to slim to this, and that's a big secret.
Get Mary Ellen's best-selling Help Yourself diet in this week's Star. Plus, Thornbird's Richard Chamberlain, in a frank and sizzling interview, tells why there's no woman in his life and why he'll never marry. Also in the Star, a guide to understanding your dreams. And Liz tells of the man she knew and loved most. All in the Star this week.
At the heart of a well-chosen pineapple are a few slices that are the sweetest, tenderest, juiciest, the best. And only the best part is good enough for Dole. Packed in its own juice with no sugar added. Because Dole knows what a sparkling texture this brings. What a flavorful touch. What a juicy delight the best part is. So make sure you get only the best part of the pineapple from Dole.
What's for lunch?
Surprise.
A hamburger.
No, it's a chicken patty.
Looks like...
A hamburger. Taste it.
Tastes like
Chicken.
chicken.
100% chicken. Banquet chicken patties.
Great idea.
That's a hamburger. People are mad. Nah,
Sure they are.
Maybe a little.
New Banquet Patties, Nuggets, and Sticks are 100% tender, juicy chicken. Gonna drive hamburger lovers mad.
We told you.
If you've got a ham on your Easter menu, put Purity on your Easter shopping list. We've got everything, from canned hams to whole hams, all at lower than everyday basic value prices.
Like this 5-pound Patrick Cudahy canned ham, just $8.49. $8.49.
At Purity, we're famous for our Easter ham values, just like you're famous for your Easter family dinners. It's a great team. You and Purity, your basic value store.
There's a phone question waiting for you. Hello there, you're on the air.
Yes, hi. I'm a Vietnam veteran, and I have two questions. My name's Tim.
Hi.
My father and my brother were also in Vietnam, and my father died at age 55 of cirrhosis of the liver. And they had asked if they could do an autopsy. My mother said yes, which they never gave her the results. They both died in the VA hospital, by the way. My brother died a month ago. He was aged 35. And when we brought him in the hospital, the first thing my mother asked the doctor, could it be Agent Orange? And he said, definitely not.
What did they list as the cause of death for your brother?
Both of them had cirrhosis of the liver.
Both of them had cirrhosis of the liver.
Yes, and when he said it could not be Agent Orange, she asked what was it. He says, we don't know, we're doing tests. If they didn't know, how could they rule out Agent Orange?
All right, you've asked for the autopsy report and they won't give it to you, is that what you're saying?
My father, they asked her if they could do the autopsy, and she said yes, and then she tried to get the results, and they said that they could only give it to a doctor, and she never did get the results.
Okay. What legality, what kind of recourse do they have?
They usually do have to get the results released to a physician. Most hospitals will not release medical information.
But once it goes to the physician, you do have the right to see it.
Yes. Then their physician can give it to them, sure. But they have to say, please release the results of my autopsies to Dr. So-and-so, and then discuss the results.
Susan, are you finding cirrhosis of the liver as a possible side effect for Agent Orange?
It has been described, yes.
It has been as well. Okay, question for you over here. Yes, sir.
I'd just like to make a comment that the government definitely has to do something about this, because I'm eligible to go to war. If there's a war starts out, I have to go. And if this is the way they're going to treat them after the Vietnam War, I don't want to go. I don't want to bother going through all this.
My friend, what you should know is that the vets who served in that war were the most disparaged group of soldiers ever in our country's history. Every other time the soldiers have returned from war, they have been presented with a country's praise. Here, they have been excoriated up until a few years ago.
Yes, sir.
And it's wrong, and you're right.
I'd like to know about is, in this country, we're disposing these toxic chemicals, and this is our country. This isn't just the war now. This is our country that's getting into our drinking water. What actions are being taken to prevent this from happening again?
Well, what we've got to do is recapture the regulatory agencies, because we've got to get organized and protect
You're talking about the EPA.
Yeah, the American environment from the government and from the chemical companies at the moment, because the regulatory agencies are letting the chemical companies do what they please.
Well, the enemy isn't the Viet Cong anymore, it's dioxin.
Remember, chemical companies right now would rather see American babies born with birth defects than see their corporate profits dwindle.
Thank you all so much for joining us. And I wish you great success in your trial and in your personal lives as well. Thank you for joining me. Come back tomorrow.
Adam and Eve on a raft.